Welcome to the Strain Podcast, a Southgate Media Group production, where we talk all about Guillermo del Toro's horror fantasy series, The Strain. We are currently covering the series' third season on FX. This is the episode for the finale. I'm your host, Blaire Nightgraves, executive producer and host of Professional Geek Podcast, and with me today is Kyle Tremblay, the editor-in-chief at TVBinges.com. You can find us on Twitter at Blaire Loves TV and at Kyle Loves TV. Follow this podcast's Twitter handle at The Strain Pod, and don't forget to play hashtag The Strain Bingo with us next year when we come back for a chance to be on our show. Hey Kyle, how are you today?
Oh Blaire, I am so excited to be talking to you, to have survived the nuclear apocalypse.
Yes.
To talk to you about this entire series devoted to a small child who is hell-bent on destroying humanity.
Yep. I'm excited to talk to you about this flaming dumpster fire, Kyle. So I'm...
Oh boy, you tipped your cards. You already revealed what you think about the episode.
Sorry. It's okay. We'll get to it. Everybody can listen to me and hopefully not get mad. Today, Kyle, you and I will be discussing the season 3 finale, episode 10, titled The Fall, which was written by Carlton Cuse and Chuck Hogan. Carlton Cuse is, of course, the showrunner, and Chuck Hogan is, of course, one of the authors that the book series is based off of and one of the screenwriters for the show. So, yes, we will be discussing The Fall, Kyle.
The fall.
The fall.
The fall of humanity and the fall of one child. And that child's name is Zach.
Yes. I feel so bad for that actor. We've talked about this before on the podcast, that the fans seem to feel like it is appropriate to tweet at him how much they hate him.
That sucks. Don't do that. Our very first, before we talk about how horrible this character is, we need to first stress, you should not tweet at the actor. It's not his fault.
It's not his fault.
It's not his fault.
Tweet at Carlton Cuse and Chuck Hogan.
Please find Carlton Cuse. If they don't have Twitter, send them a letter.
Right.
About their treatment of this character.
Yes. Let them know that you are very disappointed, but do not let this child know that you are very disappointed, because that is not this child's fault.
Hey guys, how about we leave the child alone? I'm having a very strong sense of deja vu, because I feel like this is like the conversation we had exactly 1 year ago, when in last season's finale, Zach conspired with himself to get Nora killed. And it's almost impressive how a show can rely on its one child character to cause everything bad when that show is about the vampire apocalypse.
Yes, it has consistently been about a child messing everything up for everybody all the time, and not necessarily about vampires.
Yeah, it's when the master himself, as we will get into, is very, very easily subdued, and everything is gone bad, and the apocalypse is over, leave it to a small child to turn the tides of war. It's just like, wow, that's your plot mechanism, like, and not just in this case, but like in every case, like when humanity looks like they're gonna win, who do you call? Zach. It's kind of amazing that in this world the show has constructed, the only failsafe they have for ensuring that there is content for another season for 2 straight years now is Zach, the small child.
The 11-year-old boy.
The 11-year-old boy. Like, their only place to turn is Zach.
Yes.
Wow.
But at least they they did a couple of, I'm going to give them some points where I can. You know, we came full circle, and Kelly died as opposed to Nora dying in the last season. Which, by the way, another female character with speaking lines has been killed off.
Well, you know, we were rolling after For All the last week, so we just had to keep eliminating female characters.
Yep, just had to take away all the dialogue from female voices.
At this point, are they trolling us? Like, what is happening? Kelly is one of 2 female characters left on the show.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, that's not like main characters. 2 female characters, period.
Who have names.
Who have names.
Yes.
2 named female characters on the show. I don't think we're missing anyone. I think there are 2 female characters alive on the show who have names, and one of them was killed in this finale, while every male character survived.
Yes, that is true.
It's staggering. It is. We have now passed The Walking Dead and its treatment of black characters in season 1 and 2. Like, we are now in uncharted territory in terms of like, a show committing crimes against non-white male characters.
Yeah, that's true. The Strain is like, it has accomplished a major feat on television.
Yeah, considering that in the books, and I don't even care anymore about the plot. Like, no one should care about the plot of this show. So, but spoiler alert for the books. I think we spoilers that we said last week. So if you listened last week, you're fine. Both Palmer, and this is the spoiler alert, Satrakian die in book 2. Mm-hmm. And the show...
And Eichhorst.
And Eichhorst.
So all 3 of the old white men die.
And all 3 were in mortal danger in this episode, and yet all pulled through. And assuming Palmer comes back, I don't know if the Master is still going to occupy that body or what, but assuming we didn't see him die, the Master presumably escaped in Palmer's body. So they managed to keep the 3 ancient white men alive and yet kill the 1 female character, one of the 2 female characters that exists in this world. And by the way, the other one is Dutch Velders, who had 95% of her dialogue in this episode be about relationships.
Yes, not just about relationships, but about how she should be ashamed of her empowered sexuality.
Well, that was Fett's dialogue. You know what, The Strain, you're right. I was liking Fett too much. I was having too much fun calling him Nicolas Cage this season. And you know what? That got a little out of hand. I needed to be reminded that he's a jerk. Thanks to Strain for making me dislike one of the 3 characters you've created that's worthwhile. That's good. No, yeah. You know what? The Strain writers, you're right, Carlton Cuse. We needed a slut-shaming scene. If only our characters talked more like Twitter, is the thing. Is what I say when I'm watching TV. If only these characters talked like effing eggs on Twitter. That's what I want for my TV shows. And now Fett is an egg. Great.
Yeah, I was very disappointed. I can't. I just can't. No, I mean, it was just like, Fett has been, he's kind of a lovesick puppy, but he has been the consistent good guy the entire time. Like, even when things weren't good with Dutch, when she went off with Nikki, like, he was still, like, understanding and way more wonderful than he necessarily needed to be in that situation. But God forbid she has sexual relations with another man. Then it's an affront to him or something.
Oh yeah, then his manhood is challenged. By the way, in the timeline of the show, Fett and Dutch's relationship lasted like 4 days. Like, it wasn't like a lifelong commitment. It was a fling. And Fett is consumed so much that in the, like, he is going to confront the Master. This is quite literally the fight for humanity's survival, and Fett sees it necessary to throw shade at Dutch and slut-shame her. Mm-hmm. Like, to go out of his way. She is an integral part of this plan, and he is so consumed with jealousy that he can't help but criticize the only woman on screen. Like, wow, like, in next season's premiere, Fett is going to be wearing a Make America Great Again hat. Like, this is where we're headed with the character. He is a Twitter egg. Like, what a sad turn. I mean, there were 10 other things in this episode that were worse, but that was really, like, depressing. Why? Why would you do that? To a character that you know the audience likes, that you want the audience to like, why would he be consumed with jealousy in the climactic moment of the season?
after he also went off and got laid with another lady.
He did the same thing.
Like, which, by the way, her name is Kate, and
named female character.
So now we do have a second named female character.
She was on screen for 4 minutes total this season, but yes, you are correct. We have 2 named female characters who exist in this universe.
Yes, who have not died, and yes. So, he did the exact same thing as Dutch, and he's not going around and like admitting fault to that. No.
And here's the thing. But you're absolutely right. But also, there's a line that I want to be careful of, because having flawed characters is fine. It's not a problem in a vacuum that you have a character who is a hypocrite. You know, that it's possible that the show is intentionally doing that. That they are writing the character that way to make him seem flawed. But why? Why in the climactic moment do you go ahead and establish the trait that the de facto hero of the show is the most petty man in the United States? Like, why did you choose that moment, and why did you choose that character trait? Why is that? Why are you turning Fett into that? Like, I don't, like, it would be, like, if F had done that, I would have kind of got it. Like, if the tables had been turned a bit, I kind of got it, because that's sort of F's deal.
Yeah, he's just like the jealous guy.
He's a jealous, sort of jerky guy. Like, I get it, and I could buy that the hypocrisy that you're pointing out is something that the show intended. But why Fett? Why would you do that with Fett at that moment and just ruin the character? Like why he's the boom boom guy?
Boom.
Why is he consumed? Why is he not focused on, I don't know, stopping the ancient vampire that's about to blow up New York?
Because he's got disgruntled business that he's got to get off his chest in case they die, Kyle.
Yeah, I guess so.
Because he's a man, and that's what men do, Kyle.
You're right. No, and that's the view the show has. That, because the show didn't go out of its way to condemn him. They did give Dutch a couple good comeback lines. Like, Dutch, to the show's credit and to her credit, stood up for herself.
Yes.
She did not take this passively, which I think is the least the show could do for us. And Fett did seem to sort of come around after she chastised him a bit.
Yes.
But, boy, like, way to just ruin a character real quick. Like how do you ruin a character in like 15 seconds of screen time? That's an instruction manual on how to do it.
Yes, watch the Strains season finale for season 3, and you will now know how to make a likable character the worst. The worst TM.
Right. I mean, they also did that with Feraldo, which, as we now know, was kind of unintentional, because based on how she ended.
Yes.
Like, I think they unintentionally made her unlikable. Like, boy, this show cannot get out of its own way.
No, it cannot. Which, we should talk about that. We should talk about the broad strokes of this episode and the things that actually went down. I'm happy to be having these nitpicks, because this is what I live for with this podcast.
Yes, we got big things to
We do have
big fish to fry.
Yes, and also, FYI, for everybody listening, at the end, we're going to tell you about a special cool new project we're talking about, because Kyle and I like talking about this stuff so much, we're going to do it more. But
stick around.
I know, it's like we're staying around. We're not leaving after the Strain. But we should talk about the Strain. So Palmer's the master.
Palmer is he hasn't been the master. The master was a rando soldier for a while now. Within 5 minutes of the episode opening, what a terrible reveal that the master just hopped in a random SWAT body. Was a rando this whole time. Yeah. Wow. Way to diffuse your own mystery. And then it took over Palmer's body to get the secrets of the where the nuke is. And here's where my problems begin. Oh, goodness. Because my understanding, and you correct me, as the expert, the resident expert, I'm relying on you to correct me. My understanding is that anyone who is a Strigoi, Palmer has full and complete access to their memories. He has access to their mind. When he turned Kelly, he now knows what Kelly knows about F and stuff. Is that not true?
This is true. That's how basically he knew where Zach was and what Zach looked like was because of Kelly. And yes, so you are correct. He could have just given him the white or the worm.
Yeah, well, that's where I was going. Why did he have to become Palmer in order to gain access to his memories? And also, Palmer says the nuclear bomb is in a safe. You're telling me that the Master, with all of his resources, can't crack a safe? Like, can't... There's no way to... Like, it just seems like a very minor barrier. Like, I am this vampire who's lived for tens of thousands of years, but if you put an iron safe in front of me, I will do your bidding.
Right. And I have SWAT dudes, so I clearly have, like, dudes who know how to do that somewhere. One of those guys knows how to do that, and one, if not many of them, have grenades that could blow the safe up, which then might just cause a nuclear explosion, but hey...
But that's what you want.
Win-win.
Yeah, right, you want a nuclear explosion. And couldn't he have taken a Strigoi pawn, controlled the pawn, and had the pawn run to the Statue of Liberty with the bomb in a safe?
Yeah, why Icarus? Also, sorry.
Yeah, why Icarus? Icarus is your most important single individual. You have a bunch of pawns. Why is Icarus in charge of this?
Yeah. But yes, you could take the safe to the Statue of Liberty.
Or like you said, just turn Palmer the normal way and gain access to him.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing is, when you become Palmer, you have a 90-year-old's body now.
Right.
And when you gained access to Palmer's memories, you should have gained access to the fact that Palmer, before he was turned, set up this plan with the whole team, with F and Fett and Dutch and the whole team. And Palmer knew they were coming and knew what time they were coming at. And the Master apparently had access to that and was ready for them. But yet, the Master did not have his SWAT team ready. He did not lay any kind of ambush. And when after a very cool dialogue scene where he reveals himself gradually as being Palmer.
Credit to the show. Cool scene. Good scene. They had a couple of excellent scenes, and this is one of them. Yes.
Palmer, the Master, could not defeat them in single combat.
He's a 90-year-old male with kidney and liver problems.
So why did he put himself in that situation if he knew it was going to come? Why didn't he have the SWAT team members that he had already utilized hiding behind pillars in the room ambush them? Or why isn't he so powerful that he used the body in a way, what I'm saying is the Master purposefully put himself in a situation where he was fighting an equally old Abe and a completely useless F. The Master knew he was putting himself in that situation. He chose not to have any kind of failsafe, and then he loses very easily. Like some supervillain he is. That's boy, if you want me to be scared of your villain, that's kind of a crappy way to do it.
Yeah.
Considering how easily they bested him.
Getting the villain into the box in a 2-minute sequence.
Yeah.
Is like there should have been at least a cat and mouse chase, like right. It was a great fight scene, great dialogue leading up to it. It was a great 2 minutes. I enjoyed all of those. Yeah. Those what is that? 2 minutes, 120 seconds. But yes. I enjoyed those 120 seconds. But as you said, there's so many other things, so many other resources that the Master has, especially as Palmer Master, that there should have, didn't he have one of those rooms that had those crazy lights or something like that? He could have just had one of those with daggers or something. I don't know.
But you're hitting on the point, which is that if he takes over Palmer's body, the only reason he would take over Palmer's body and not just turn Palmer into a common Strigoi, which would have been a much more poetic end for Palmer, by the way.
Yes.
For him to have compromised humanity, to have bargained away humanity, only to be turned into a mindless vampire, one of a million. That is a poetic and fitting and poignant end. But instead, of course, the show does the most blunt and dumb thing it can do, which is turn Palmer into the Master. But okay, so the Master wants to inhabit Palmer. The reason he's doing that is to exploit Palmer's connections, obviously. Right? He needs to pretend to be Palmer to exploit political connections that Palmer has. I'll buy that. Like you said, why didn't he do that? Why did he immediately, his first order of business was to craft a situation in which he is in physical combat.
Yeah.
It's like, why wouldn't he use those connections to get these guys subdued? Like, it is so nonsensical why that situation occurred and how the Master got himself captured and why he became Palmer. It is ludicrous and just complete nonsense.
And that he's been bested almost every time he's shown up this season.
And in season 1, they beat him. I mean, the Master is a complete failure anytime he comes up against our team. He never kills any of them. He always almost dies.
So, spoiler tag again, that's something we talked about last week, having to do with the books. In the books, he literally grabs people and just shreds them in half. Yeah. Like, just splits them in half. And they show that in the first episode of the season, or the series, because they wanted, that was going to be a theme that they just suddenly decided to drop. And so when we got to the sequence where Palmer was with everybody and knowing that he just shreds people in such a way, I was like, oh boy, F is gonna get shredded, or Abe is gonna get shredded. Like, there's no way we'd be going up against the Master himself unless somebody's gonna get shredded. But no, nobody got shredded. Nobody died.
It's why our jokes about Zach being the real big bad of the show are not wrong. Zach is the only big bad who is unchallenged on this show. The Master loses every fight like a henchman. I mean, the Master, someone tell me, now that he is embodying a 90-year-old frail man, what is scary about the Master? Name one thing that is scary about him other than his voice, which is very cool.
Oh yeah, and the guy who plays Palmer had some good. Hold on.
We gotta talk about his master face.
His master face looked like the Swedish Chef from the Muppets, but he did. The way he was speaking German, way he was speaking German was just like Swedish Chef on the Muppets. But when he was actually fighting, he was a lot more. He had a lot better physicality than I thought that he would.
He was great.
Yeah,
he was great. Not scary. Not scary. Because, again, he was bested by an equally old man and a useless scientist. And, okay, other thing. Let's keep hitting this scene. Why did the Master's stinger stop working when Dutch activated the communications jammer?
Oh.
Because, as has been established this season, what the communications jammer does is it stops the signal from the Master to his minions. It throws the Strigoi themselves into disarray. Why did it affect the Master himself if he is embodying Palmer's body?
Fair question that I didn't think about up until now. No, that doesn't make any sense, because everything that they've shown is mostly just that they go docile, not that they become... It's more that they become docile and incompetent, and not that they can't use their powers. It's
specifically a communication jammer. That is the term they use. And the communication we are talking about is the telepathic communication from the Master to his minions. So what we have been led to believe this whole time is that without the Master's voice in the head, the minions are useless. And we saw that multiple scenes. Like when they first try it with the Strigoi in a cage, when Eichhorst and Kelly have to round up the Strigoi to attack the New York City Feraldo's lab for the first time, like how they have to sort of physically round them up and how they're much more difficult. It's because they're not connected to the Master. Why in the world would that device affect the Master himself? It's a communications jammer.
Second point.
Yeah.
We watched in season 1 how long it took people to actually become Strigoi and develop the tongue, because that's like a thing that takes time. And I believe that it was like a day and a half for you to fully vamp out. And we've seen them hold them in science labs and all that stuff. Palmer got his tongue real fast.
Physiologically, explain to me how that happened. In 3 hours, maybe?
Yeah, they had 4 hours between
4 hours.
Well, when Palmer saw them or when Palmer saw Satrakian, and then they were supposed to meet up.
So he grew a full stinger in 4 hours?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess with the Master and stuff, maybe that the Master is different physiologically, but that again underscores the point. If the Master is different physiologically, why was he affected by the jammer? Like, it's not, like, they went through so much trouble this season to establish the jammer. And like you said, in season 1, they went through so much trouble to establish the physiology of the Strigoi. And this episode, it within, like, a 1-minute span, blatantly disregards both. Flagrantly disregards the rules that the show has established for itself.
For a cool scene.
For a cool scene that, in service of a very dumb plot development.
Yes.
There is just no reason for him to be Palmer unless he was exploiting the connections, which he expressly doesn't do. He specifically does not exploit connections as Palmer.
The reason that you would have him be Palmer is so that a character like Feraldo is alive, and so that Palmer and Feraldo can come together and, you know, quote unquote do some good together, but ultimately, like, he's tricking Feraldo, or so that he can go to his crazy little meat lab where he's like collecting people's blood from these centers, which, by the way, hanging dead plot that was supposed to be cool and not addressed at all. Like, there's so many different diplomatic reasons to have the body of Palmer, who is just one of the most influential human beings on the planet. And you use yourself to get into
physical combat.
Fisticuffs, yeah.
Fisticuffs was your plan. And again, Palmer, before he was turned, knew this plan. So the Master knew this when he took over Palmer and took no precautions.
Oh boy. I didn't mind that as much before you.
Yeah. No, this is... I actually, like, left the finale with kind of mixed feelings on it for reasons that we haven't actually gotten into yet. I'm already hating it. I'm so upset at this finale from talking about it.
I mean, it's the same thing that I was talking about in last week's episode of the podcast, which is that I think you could take a college course if you were a television major. You could take a college course in everything that went wrong with the strain. Like,
I'm still waiting for your documentary.
I know. I'm making a documentary. Well, now it's a college course. I was going to make a documentary. Now
professor.
I'm going to be a professor of television, and I'm going to have a whole semester dedicated to how you can royally mess up something that has a genuinely good idea. And the entire course will be about the strain. Kids will watch 3 episodes per class, and there will be pop quizzes about where the ineptitude lies, and then you have to write a 20-page essay on why do these plots not connect. Is it because of production, or is it because of writing?
It's oh boy.
Documentary though.
I want to talk about something positive for a second, which is the opening sequence. Where we have an opening montage where Abe narrates. The show is now batting 1,000 on these opening montages where Abe narrates.
Yes.
They are very good, and they are also apparently describing a different show. Because the show that Abe describes in his narration in this 2-minute scene is the show that I want the strain to be. It's a show about the global collapse. It's a show about this, this worldwide catastrophe that is occurring, and how in just 41 days the world has fallen, and how it contextualized it in human history and human growth and technology. It was beautifully written and moving and made me feel like the show matters. And then I think 1 week ago today, we were watching freaking Palmer pretending he's in a Mad Men episode. So we could learn why he called his stupid company the Stoneheart Group. And I'm like, the show you are describing, Abe, is a very good show. It is not the show called The Strain.
No, it is not.
The narration that Abe gives, which I suppose is to summarize the events that have happened, has no connection with the events as we have seen them.
Nope, it's the world outside of what we see.
Which is AKA the interesting part.
The interesting part, not the 9021, the strain or whatever.
Oh, yeah. It really brought into focus that we are watching this is the single least interesting perspective we could have on this story. Like, the show just manages to do the worst possible job at making extremely interesting and compelling subject matter feel those things. Like they you really have to go out of your way to make a vampire apocalypse feel like a bad CW drama. And week after week, the strain accomplishes just that. Mm-hmm. Like, week after, it's almost impressive. Like, as a college course, I know you're joking, but it would be interesting, like, because you're studying something that is so wrong-headed. And as we saw, like, with that intro sequence, like, has the capacity to do good. And has technical ability to do good. And I think, oftentimes at least, has the budget to do good. And certainly has the cast to do good. And is failing, I assume, because of just the overall direction. Like, the overall, like, ideas are bad. And it's not even so much the writing of those ideas. It's the guiding hand is wrong.
It's the big picture moment. If you were on a time, if they're like on a timeline and they're writing each episode, like, this is where we have to get to in this episode. That's what's wrong.
That's the problem.
The timeline is wrong. The
storyboarding.
The storyboarding is wrong. That's what it is. Yes.
That's the problem. That is where I think having watched this, it really has been instructive these last 5 episodes, because I think we've been able to pinpoint that the storyboarding is what the problem is that they do a very bad job at aligning plots to episodes and creating arcs and being conscientious about who your characters are and how the audience perceives them. Like, it is so crystal clear that this show has absolutely no idea how the audience perceives Zach, and just has no knowledge of that, or just forgot, or it just doesn't know how to act on that knowledge. Maybe it does know that the audience hates Zach and just doesn't know how to deal with that. But it's just like, that's the problem.
So,
I think the actual writing. Yeah.
No, I think this episode they knew that the audience hated Zach, and they reinforced it. You can continue, but I think in this episode, it was no longer our audiences kind of don't like him. It was like, they don't like him, so we might as well just make him, like, as evil as possible.
I agree and I disagree, and I know exactly what you're saying. And this is something I'm wrestling with. Let's talk about that. Because this is, to me, the most interesting part of the episode, which is the fact that Zach is the one to cause the downfall of humanity.
That 11-year-old set off the bomb.
Yeah.
The 11-year-old clicked the button on the nuke because he hated his father.
Yeah. Wow.
Are there 11-year-olds? I mean, I know 11-year-olds do really... I know pubescent children...
Yeah.
Adolescent and pubescent children do a lot of stupid things if they hate their parents, or even if they don't hate their parents, just because when you don't know what the world is, you do stupid things. But I feel like that's like the type of thing that anybody who doesn't have a mental defect goes, you know what? This ain't worth it. You know, like...
It seems like a stretch. But this gets at my point. And I do want to comment on what you said, because you're right. Like, okay. Zach... I think I commented on this a few episodes back, or maybe like half a season ago. I forget. The timeline is all muddy. When it was another Zach scene. It was when Kelly used her stinger and Zach saw it, and Zach was shocked for some reason, even though he had already seen her use her stinger.
Because it was a 12-year-old boy that looked like him that she was drinking.
Yeah, but okay, so that's what we were talking about.
Right.
I said, there are 2 ways to go with Zach. He can either be the innocent kid who is biding his time and looking for an opportunity to escape, or he could do a full heel turn and become evil. And either way is acceptable and preferable to what the show is trying to do, which is have him do evil things, but like out of ignorance. Like the show with Nora's death is the best example, where they are still trying to portray Zach sympathetically, even though they are using him as the mechanism to cause evil on the show. Constantly. Like how he lets Kelly into their hideout, how he constantly puts the group in danger, all the things that happened during last season. Throughout all of that, the show was trying to get us to feel sympathetic for Zach. So what I was saying is, either have him be a good guy or a bad guy, but don't have him play the role of a bad guy, but be treated as a good guy. And to the show's credit, to the point that you made, he is a bad guy. This is the episode that establishes that Zach is a bad guy.
Yes.
There is no... He is... Now, it's not like a For All the thing where we're projecting. The show... When that scene where Icarus visits him after the bomb has gone off, and Zach takes his hand, and Zach is not horrified by the carnage he has caused. He's a little bit stunned. He is not horrified. He is not regretful.
There are people screaming all around him. They made that, it was a poignant, really well done scene to say, this kid is a sociopath. He does not care. He can hear the people screaming who he just harmed, and he does not, in any way, shape, or form, care. Stunned because it's weird? Totally. Horrified? Absolutely not.
Yes, exactly. And so that is a choice they have made, and I respect that. I was scared to death that Zach was going to see the carnage and run back and hug his dad. That's what I thought the show was going to do. That F would forgive Zach for killing tens of thousands of people and for ushering in the apocalypse, and that we would just go on with Zach as a good guy. I respect that the show finally committed to him being a bad guy. And so that's had me a little bit conflicted about the ridiculousness of him hitting the button, because the show did commit to it finally. But the problem is what you were talking about earlier, that the moment when he hits the button because his dad killed his mom in front of him. We haven't checked in with Zach and Kelly for 5 episodes.
Mm-hmm.
And the entirety of this moment, the biggest moment of the season, the biggest moment of the series to date, hands down, was completely not set up in the preceding episodes. Like, they did not prepare any kind of emotional groundwork for this in at least 4 weeks prior to this. And that is so shocking to me. Like, that's where the show isn't being intentional. They were intentional in this episode about Zach being evil, but I think the show intended for him to have a reason to be evil, which is that he loved his mother so much, and that even as a vampire, he clearly loved her more than his father. I think that's what they were going for. You cannot have a month's worth of episodes prior to the biggest moment in the show hinging on that without even having him be a character on the show. That can't happen. That cannot happen. You have to... The previous episode should have been all about Zach and Kelly. It should have been wall-to-wall Zach and Kelly, establishing this dynamic so that when his mother is killed, it hits. Because that moment did not hit emotionally. I was sad to lose the Kelly character. I did not really care that she was killed in front of Zach, because she's been a vampire for a while, and I have no emotional connection to those characters. And I didn't feel sorry for F doing it, because again, it seemed like Kelly should have died a while ago, because she was like the antagonist last season. It was kind of weird that she didn't die. And the show didn't lay any groundwork in it for a month on this. And it just, they resurrected it out of nowhere, just like they did with Nora and F's romance in last season's finale. They resurrected that story out of nowhere in order to try to make Nora's death mean something. Here, they resurrected the Zach-Kelly relationship after not dealing with it for 4 episodes to try to make that moment mean something, and it didn't. And that's where I think the show dropped the ball. And that's where I think it failed in making Zach a convincing villain.
Yeah, I think there's an argument. I'm not saying that I am behind this argument, but I think that there is an argument to say that they did attempt to set that groundwork specifically in this episode. And I agree with you. It should have been like the last episode. That's all it should have. It should have been their swan song, like the beautiful mother-son relationship, rather. Even the creepy but beautiful relationship that they have. Like try to make us care. I think we got exactly 90 seconds of it in this episode.
Yeah, the feeler scene.
The feeler scene.
Or Zach's pet feeler.
Which was one of the first times, like, I guess I probably should have seen the writing on the wall, but it was one of the first times probably one of 2 times this entire season where I kind of got it between Zach and Kelly. Like,
see, to me, the ridiculousness of him having a pet feeler overshadows whatever.
I hear you. But like, in terms of the performances, like they delivered. They delivered that dialogue well, and it was one of the only times that I really ever felt like they had this, albeit strange, but this mother and son relationship, and that it was loving and caring, and that whole dear one mentality that we're always talking about, that the vampires come for their dear ones, where it was convincing that Kelly was, holding on to one of her dear ones. And I thought that was in its own way beautiful between the two of them. I agree. The feeler thing is totally overshadowing it, but like it was one of the only times where it was really effective for me. So I should have seen the writing on the wall that she'd be gone, but that should have been, as you were saying, the entire previous episode. We shouldn't have to like go to 90 seconds of dialogue to actually care about these two characters who are so integral to the fall of frickin' humanity.
The other thing, and I hear you, I understand that, they certainly did make an effort in this episode to do it, and they made an effort very early in the season to establish this, and then apparently they just, like, said, job's done, and moved on until this episode to remind us of it. I view Kelly's sort of love of Zach more as instinct than anything, and the Master's plotting. Like, at this point, Kelly is a Strigoi, and she, in a previous episode, says that only when the Master's grip loosens slightly on her mind can she access even her own feelings. Most of the time, she's being directly controlled by the Master. And so to me, like, a lot of that relationship is kind of play acting. It's the Master sort of tapping into Kelly's feelings to placate Zach. Presumably because he's a valuable chess piece against F, as has been borne out this season. And Kelly's, what you're saying about the dear ones, every Strigoi desires their dear ones. That's hardwired into each and every Strigoi. It's why they all go after their family members. I don't view Kelly as having any kind of tender love of Zach because I don't think she's capable of it anymore. I think that she is being manipulated or being directly controlled like a puppet by the Master. Like, there's no emotional stakes in that relationship, except maybe from Zach's side. But he's a character whose motivations have been completely opaque and have honestly just been manipulated to fit whatever the show wants him to feel. I mean, he is the most flagrant example of the show doing that, where Zach is whoever the show needs him to be.
Right.
And he's been that way since the first appearance on screen. Whether he's the genius child who's an expert with computers, the whiny teenager, like whatever the show wants Zach to be in any given week, Zach is that character.
But I thought that the vampires that had the ability to speak did think on their own right, on their own accord.
I mean, it's directly addressed earlier this season when Kelly says that line about the Master loosening his grip on her mind.
Right.
Like, it's directly addressed. So there are moments when Kelly has her own accord, but I mean, look, the proof is in the pudding. In this episode, the Master is shut in a coffin, and Kelly very quickly reverts to feral and can't even speak anymore. And it very nearly kills Zach for about the fourth time this season, and barely fights it off just to go upstairs to consult with the Master. And I very much suspect that if F hadn't have been there, if the room had been empty, Kelly would have turned and stingered Zach in his neck, which is what Strigoi's instincts tell them to do, which is what any Strigoi would do, whether they're conscious or not, to their loved one. Like, Kelly, to me, without the Master, Kelly and Ike, or at least Kelly, is pretty close to being a feral vampire with only a sliver of her original consciousness remaining.
Yeah.
Which is what she was this episode.
Unlike Icarus, who seems to, maybe over time...
I think that's the thing, is that Icarus is matured a lot more than Kelly has in this role, and he seems to function just fine without the Master.
Yeah, that was it was interesting to have that difference between Kelly and Icarus.
Maybe it's that the Icarus doesn't have any loved ones left.
Oh.
And that the sort of dear ones concept overpowers whatever consciousness Kelly has. And that because she is next to one of her dear ones who is not a Strigoi, those animal instincts kick in. And that, but I mean, like, the way she attacked F without any dialogue or anything, like, she literally could not speak without the Master's voice in her head. She could not form sentences. She didn't speak to Zach. She trudged up the stairs and then attacked F like a feral dog.
Was that also because he's a loved one or a dear one?
Well,
in theory,
I don't think so. No, I don't think there's any love Kelly has for F. I think that was she reacted the way Strigoi would react to seeing someone on the streets, which is attack them.
Yeah.
Right? Like that, she is a feral Strigoi at that point.
Yeah.
With a sliver of consciousness remaining, which was just barely enough to spare Zach for a moment. That was it. Like, so to me, like, the whole point of that is there's no emotional stakes in that relationship. Like, Zach is such a non-character and a non-entity up until the very end of this episode, when he finally makes a choice and becomes evil for good, that I feel no emotional connection to him, obviously. And Kelly, there's no, like, sympathy there. Like, she's just a puppet being controlled by the Master. Like, there's no emotional stakes. But I guess what I'm saying is, if they had really delved into that in the previous 3 or 4 episodes, then maybe it could have been there. Maybe from F's side it would have, like, maybe we could have got there. But as it stands, no. To me, I don't buy it. And that's the half that didn't work for me about this whole Zach thing.
Well, I'm there with you, man. We should talk about the actual bomb. Like,
the bomb.
The actual repercussions of the bomb. 'Cause, you know what? As terrible and dumpster fiery as much of this episode was, I mean, you've covered it for me. I don't feel like I need to expand on it.
I've monologued.
Yeah, well, we're pushing an hour, so I'm not going to expand on any more thoughts. But the bomb really worked, even though there's a lot of stuff that I have questions about. The bomb scene, every little piece about it really worked. Like, it was very effective. And it's one of those things where I'm talking about that documentary, that classroom setting that I'm going to have, where there's so many cool moments, so many cool ideas, concepts, broad strokes. But man, with the nitty gritty, they have problems. But with stuff like this, ooh, I don't know. Yeah. That was especially living in the United States, given our political climate right now, that was chilling. It was upsetting, and it was chilling, and it was incredibly effective. The special effects were gorgeous. The characters whose lives were in danger were very sympathetic. Quinlan was hilarious. I'm so glad he survived. Like, every little note that they needed to hit about the bomb going off really, really worked. And that makes me excited. I don't necessarily, proof is in the pudding. Next season probably won't be very good because it hasn't been very good historically. Mm-hmm. But it set up a really cool, temperature for the future, and it did a really, really good, it was just really very effective. Like, you could tell that they saved a lot of their budget for it, and they cut corners in other places, but it was really worth it in a lot of ways.
It is very cool to be watching a series where a nuclear bomb can be detonated, and the show is going to live in that. That a nuclear bomb doesn't end things. That we are now going to be living in the nuclear apocalypse for the final season of The Strain. Which is interesting. It is kind of weird that the global scale wasn't more addressed, because obviously it's horrifying that a nuclear bomb went off on the Statue of Liberty. There was no mention of other nukes going off around the world.
Why don't we do a spoiler tag here for the book series? And this spoiler might be longer than the other ones. This addresses some stuff that happens in book 2. Maybe give us 2 to 5 minutes to talk this part out. But basically in the books, what we find out is, like, Chernobyl was an experiment for this, where the Master decided that he was going to set off nukes where the ancients' bodies were, where they created their own strain of Strigoi. And if you destroy the Holy Land of a Master or ancient vampire, then not only does that vampire get taken out, but all of their children get taken out, meaning that there is only one strain of this disease left, if you're going to consider the vampires to be a disease or a parasite. So in the book, there are 7 of them, and 7 bombs go off at once, including one in the United States in New York. But there are 6 other bombs that go off in the world, which destroy the ancients in a really beautiful scene that you can really visually, like you obviously aren't watching it, you're reading it, but you can visually understand what's happening, where all the ancients actually crumble because their birth site is destroyed. And it's fascinating because the entire world, literally the Book of the Strain, is an apocalypse book, because you live the rest of the book series after the nukes go off everywhere, every continent. There's no viable world anymore. They're just trying to stop the parasite before the parasite takes over literally everything, giving humanity a chance to maybe rebuild on an island somewhere. So to have only a single bomb go off in New York is a little bit problematic because it centralizes the story so much in the United States, and it doesn't really cause the epidemic problem that Abe is sort of, referencing in the beginning of the episode. Because, even though he is focusing on the United States, he's also talking about, worldwide issues. And this does not in any way, shape, or form become a worldwide issue other than, major trade has with New York or anything like that.
That's why I commented that explanation at the beginning, that montage, was for a different show. Mm-hmm. That is not the show we are watching. We are watching a show that is directly centered in New York.
Yes.
A show that treats New York as the entire world and never, ever, ever changes that setting. We never leave New York. Not once have we left New York on the strain. We
went to DC. Calm down.
Oh, you're right. Sorry. we took the 4-hour train trip. Yeah, you're right. We did go to DC once. And it looked identical to New York. That's like the problem you're saying is, it's supposed to be the apocalypse, and a nuclear bomb going off in the middle of New York is a huge problem, but it's not the apocalypse. It's not that. It's just you've got the Master taking over Palmer's body. Wouldn't the easiest thing to do would be to have the Master, through Palmer, use his connections to detonate all of his nuclear power plants around the world? They could have established that in 2 to 3 minutes of screen time and not even shown it. Just have dialogue that explosions like these are occurring all around the world, right, or will occur around that's all I need.
Oh, the Stoneheart name thing. We could have gotten rid of all of that to talk about all these factory workers all around the world being that's weird.
That's the thing is this finale, I don't even think it was that bad. I think there's lots of stupid stuff, but all the stupid stuff is because we spent the last 4 episodes on this ridiculous character flashback kick that started with Ikehurst and went through Gus and Palmer, and all we did is learn about characters, but we learned things and Fett, and we learned things about them that don't affect our understanding of them now in a meaningful way, and were, for all intents and purposes, filler. And then we get to this finale, and the finale is dealing with the actual story of the show that has been almost entirely untouched for a month. And it's what are you doing? This finale should have occurred after episode 5 in this season. This finale had more to do, the events of the finale had more to do with the first 5 episodes of the season than the last 4. The Zach and Kelly stuff, everything about this was more connected to the first 5 episodes, and it just makes me think, what have you been doing? I mean, every episode of this podcast we say, there are only 12 episodes of the show left or whatever, get moving. And this is why. Because this finale, if it had been properly set up in the previous weeks, I think would have really had a chance to land and be good. And instead we're talking about the myriad of stupid things that could have so easily been addressed in 1 or 2 of the episodes if they had repurposed them to setting up what was actually going to happen. But it's this thing that you've been harping on from the start of the season, or from about episode 3 on, which is the writers just have no communication, it seems. The storyboarding, the storytelling is so disconnected from episode to episode, and this finale is the fruits of that. And it's a rotten fruit. Because this finale sucked because the previous episodes didn't set it up right. And so this episode was bad because it was a fairly interesting house built on a foundation of sand. And it collapsed upon even the slightest breeze. Any inspection you give this finale, it crumbles under that because it's incredibly stupid. But it didn't have to be that way if it had been built on a stronger foundation of the last few episodes. And that's my ultimate problem with how the season ended.
Hey, I'm there with you. The whole nuke thing was gorgeous and everything I wanted it to be because it looked how I thought it should based on the books and based on my idea of what that experience would be like. It just was it was good. It was good. But I immediately went, what about the other 6 ones?
What's happening elsewhere in the world?
We blacked out the sun here.
Yeah.
like you didn't block out the sun in Hawaii, or probably California, maybe some of the Midwest. I don't know. But you haven't
I mean, considering the explosion didn't even kill our group.
It was right there.
20 miles away at most?
Yeah.
10 miles away? It was not a large nuke as far as nukes go. You know, this wasn't like a nuclear explosion that would destroy America. It was pretty localized. That's the thing, is if a bunch of these had gone off across the world, yeah, but apparently it's just turned, New York City into a fallout zone. Well, you know, that's not the same scale as we're talking about in Abe's montage introduction.
Want to bet the montage of season 4, episode 1 is going to be hey, 6 more went off.
100. I would bet any sum of money that is what is going to happen.
They're we didn't address it because we're just in New York for this story. No, address it, please. Please address it.
I swear the montage is, in 2 minutes, they go through the stuff that the season should have been.
Yeah.
They sum up the alternate reality version of what's happening, and it is such a better show. It just, my God.
Okay, let's talk about a couple of happy things.
Happy things.
Okay, so we had a total of 6 responses as to whether or not you should read the books. Yeah. And we should do a final episode. We had 4 for yes and 2 for no. So
it's close enough that I'm going to veto that.
Really?
Yeah. I seeing what this season ends firmly in book 2.
Yes, it does.
And it has not spilled over to book 3. I imagine the final season will be book 3. I think one of our friends on Twitter, I forget what his name is. I think it involves Maine, the state of Maine. Okay.
I know who you're talking about.
Yes.
Maine Goose Tracks.
Yes, our dynamic on this show is that you have read the books and I have not, and you're sort of the expert, and I'm the casual viewer, more the sort of detached person. And I think it is not worth compromising that for me to have read the books to learn about a season that has not affected the events of the show yet. I mean, this season took place, I think you will agree, out of the books.
Yeah.
As in, the books, if you watch the first season, and we commented on this on the podcast, the first season very closely follows book 1. Very closely. It is a very faithful recreation of book 1. This last season was cut from whole cloth. there is no book precedent for virtually any event that happened in this season.
I'll give it to you.
Except the nukes.
I'll give it to you. I'm okay.
Yeah, I don't think we should mess with our mechanic on this show. I think it works.
If they go anywhere near the books, you are in for a wild ride because the third book is so different from the first 2 books.
Well, that's the other thing is we are so off book at this point. There's a good chance that the third book will have nothing to do with this third season.
Especially because there's a couple of characters who don't die in the books, who have died in the show, and a slew of characters that do die in the books who have not died on the show.
Yeah, right. I mean, we could be heading towards a finale that has absolutely nothing in common with the books. And if that's the case, I don't want to have both of us just sit here and point out the differences.
That's fair. I'll give that to you.
Okay. So I promise I will read the books, the third book, when the final season concludes. But I think that for the good of the podcast, it's better if I don't.
All right. I'll give you that. All right. And finally, our big, cool new project announcement.
Yes.
What? Kyle and I are going to be starting a new podcast, which we're very excited about. Kyle, do you want to go through it with me? What our audience should be expecting?
So first of all, it's great that we put this after 45 minutes of us just dragging this episode.
Yes.
So Strain fans, if you have continued listening and not angrily turned off your podcast player to write us mean tweets, thank you. This is a podcast that's not going to be about any show in particular. That's unlike the Strain podcast, where we faithfully talk about every episode of the Strain each week. We are instead going to take suggestions from you for shows that Blaire and I should sample. And by sample, we mean watch the first 5 episodes of the first season. And so we will take your suggestion for a show, announce what suggestion we have taken so that you can join us if you wish in watching the first 5 episodes of the show and send in your opinions. And then we will talk about that on the podcast. Our experiences and how we liked it, and we'll analyze it and sort of do our thing. Where we, get sort of deep into the show and talk about anything that's ridiculous and praise the stuff that we like and talk about Nicolas Cage. We'll play all the hits. And then at the end of our talk, we will both decide, independently, we'll come together, decide whether we are going to continue watching the first season. And if we do, then we'll keep watching. And if not, then we'll take another suggestion and do that show. And the name of the podcast is going to be Television Taste Test.
Yep.
And that'll be the podcast.
So we're still setting up all the official stuff for that. But please tweet at Kyle and I, at Kyle Loves TV, at Blaire Loves TV. Both Kyle and Blaire have an E at the end. To let us know what TV show you would like us to start with. We are open to all suggestions. We are really looking for culturally important shows that people have really big, passionate feelings on, and ones that made a big cultural impact. So,
yeah, specifically. But we can also, if you have a pet show that you love and no one ever talks about on Twitter, that could work too.
Yeah.
We'll vary it up.
Yeah, we're open.
We'll definitely do some big ones, some big important ones, but we'll also do some very minor shows. And the important thing is they're going to be based on your suggestions. So again, tweet at us. Blaire Loves TV, Kyle Loves TV. Send us what show you want to hear us talk about and want to watch with us.
Based on how you hear us talk about The Strain, which means that we will sometimes say good things and maybe sometimes say bad things. But you know what?
If you intentionally send us bad shows, I will hunt you down. If you send us shows that you just want to hear me lose my mind over and hide in the couch about, I will not be happy, okay? Send us shows you like, or are interested in, or are thinking about watching yourself, and maybe want to hear what we think about it.
Yeah, exactly. All right, Kyle, this wraps up this season.
Blaire, we're done with this season. Are we even going to do a post show? Because I'm not reading the book.
I know. We'll figure it out. We'll tweet everybody and let you know. We'll have to figure that out. This wraps up our 39th episode of the Strain podcast, the season 3 finale. Before we go, I want to mention a few things. You can download and subscribe to our podcasts on iTunes, Stitcher, and SoundCloud. You can also hear all of our podcasts at our website, southgatemediagroup.com. Please subscribe to the show and also rate us. Follow the show on Twitter at The Strain Pod, and Kyle and I at Kyle Loves TV and at Blaire Loves TV. Have a feeling on the finale that you want to talk to us about? Send us some fan mail at thestrainpodcast@gmail.com. Thanks again for tuning in this season, and we'll see you next year.
Bye, everyone.